Looks like we are live. Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining. This is Siddharth, Community Manager at Aviyel. Aviyel is on a mission to help open source projects sustain by creating communities around them and by incentivizing the contributors. Welcome to another session of Contributor Roadmap series. Contributor Roadmap, if you don't know, is a step-by-step approach towards open source contributions. This is the week 3 of the cohort, and if you haven't signed up already, the roadmap for Doxy, TypeSense, and Mobisif is now live. The link will be dropped in the chat shortly. In this session, Victor, who's a very active community member for Aviyel, will be introducing you to the basics of Frontend. Thank you so much for joining us today, Victor. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Cesar. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I want to officially welcome you all to this wonderful session. So, like Cesar said, we are building a contributor roadmap to help people on their road to contributing to their first open source project. So, I would like to open it up by starting with this session where we'll be building a simple project using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So, just to give an overview of what we'll be building. I'll share my screen now and we'll get right into that. So this is just an overview of what we're building. It's a simple generator, an advice generator app where you'll be getting different advices. And when we click this button here, it will switch to give us another advice. We'll be using an API that is provided to us by Frontend Mentor, which is the platform that provided this challenge for us. So you can see this is the first advice we have. It says it is easy to sit up and take notice. What's difficult is getting up and taking action. So when we click this button down here, you can see it switches to the next advice. And we also have the advice ID that is displayed up here. So this is what we're building, and we'll be using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I hope you all are ready and we can get right into it. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to download the assets files for this project. So we'll just go to Frontend Mentor, which is the platform that provides this challenge. And then we'll go to the challenge section. And so we have this is the challenge right here. If you're just starting out, you can come here and download this project. You log in, you create your account, you download this project here. So I've already downloaded the project, so I can just close that out. And they have the project here on my desktop. I have the project here. So I'll just extract the files of this project. So we have the files extracted. And then inside we have all our files, our required files that we got from Frontend Mentor. I'll open up this file with VS Code. You can use with whatever editor you're using, whether Atom or Sublime Text. This works perfectly. Just open it up in your text editor. Okay, so this is a list of all our files that we have extracted. So just to give a quick rundown of what we'll be doing on the files inside, you can see we have the design files. These are the files that we can use to like get a look and a feel of what we'll be building. So we'll use this to like to know that we are doing the right thing. So the design files are here. And then we have the images. These are all the images in the project, all the files that we have as an image. They are in here. Then we have our HTML file. And then one important file we have here is our style guide. So in the style guide, we have all the files, the requirements to build this project and make it look exactly the way it was in the design that I showed you. So we have our font size and different other properties that we'll be using. So very quickly, let's just start. I hope you brought out your laptop. I hope you have your coffee by your side, and let's just view this stuff now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'll create in the root folder, I'll create our style.css. So we'll create our style.css, and then we'll go into the index.html file. You can see the file in the index.html. So we'll just go live. So we see all the changes that we are doing live. This is all we have right now, just this attribution and this little text here. So we'll quickly clear that out because we won't be needing that at all. We clear this from the comments down here. And then inside of the body tag, we'll clear out all this attribution text. So we just have a clean canvas that we can work with. Okay. Refresh to see the changes. You can see the changes that's taking effect. So the first thing the second thing we'll do, we'll link our CSS files so we can style it when we are writing the markup. So to link that, we'll just use the link tag inside of the href, say style.css. So let's quickly test out this CSS. We'll target the body and we'll give it a background of red. Okay, you can see the CSS has been linked appropriately, so we know that is good. So let's just go into the design files, style guide, where we get all our styles, all our properties that we can use to build this project. So in this, I'm in the guide now, and then I'll pull up the design so that we can take a look at what we need. I'm getting this error. Let me see. Okay, I'll open this up in my browser. I think that'll be better. Okay, this is okay, it's open now. So this is the design of the challenge. You can see the first thing we need are the colors. We need to specify the colors, and I'll store that in a variable so that we can reuse those colors. So in order to do that, let's just remove this body styling here. I'll create a root. I'll just select the roots file. Which means that if this selects every element in the HTML page, so we can create our variables here. So the first thing we need are the colors, and then we'll go into the style guide. The first thing we need is this color here, the primary color. You can see this color is on the text and on the button. So we'll just get that color, which is this neon green, I believe. So we'll just call this primary color. And then the next thing that we need is the text color and the background color as well. So I believe the text color is this light cyan we have here. So we'll add that in a variable as well. We'll call this text color. And moving on, this dark bluish, you can see the background of this stuff is very dark, and it is this color right here. It is dark blue. So I'll copy that as well, and we'll just call this. Let's call this BG primary. You can actually give these variables any name that you choose. I'm just using these names because they help me to know and remember what the variable name that we named it. So this dark grayish blue is on the card. This card you see right here is the dark grayish blue. So we'll copy that as well. I'll call this BG secondary, I guess. BG secondary. Then I'll paste that in. I think that's the colors, all the colors we need. Yes, that's all the colors we need. So let's check out other style guides that we have here. We have our font size. Okay, for the font size of this quote, you can see it says 28 pixels. So we'll copy that and add that in a variable as well. So this is the font. This is for the font of the quote. So that big text you see there is the font quote. So we'll use 28 pixel, and then maybe we can add one for maybe the whole page. We can just say font primary. We can just say one web. Let's check out our style guide as well. Okay. So these are the weights that has been given to us. These weights are not mandatory, but it just helps you to get the design perfectly as the way they did it. So we'll be taking these weights. We'll start with this desktop weights. We'll create a variable for that as well. So we'll just call this weight. Inside of this weight, we'll say weight for the desktop. We'll paste that in. We'll create another one. We'll say weight for the mobile. And then maybe we'll just create another one. I'll just say primary weight. I'll make this 1200 pixel. And then for the mobile, we have 375. So we'll add that here. Say 375 pixel. Okay, I think that we are done with the weights. One other thing, then we have the fonts. Yeah. So these are the fonts this is the font that's been provided for us. So we'll quickly go to Google Fonts and download this font. So I'm opening the link up in Google Fonts. So these are the fonts. We'll select it. I'll be linking, you can link this font in two ways, on the inside the HTML page or inside the CSS. But it's good practice, or it's better when you link it inside of the HTML, because when a page loads, it loads the HTML first before it loads the styling. So you really want your font to be completely loaded before the CSS. So you don't have to rely on CSS to load your font. So I'll copy the link for the font, close this out. We go into our HTML file, and then above or below the favicon, we'll paste in the font. We just call this font so we can know that this is the font, and I'll save. So we have our font inside. And then one last thing, we need the font weight. This weight, I believe, is for the font quote. This text you have here, I believe that's the weight that we have. So we'll say font weight, and then we just use the value of weight to store our variable for that. So we've written down all our variables. This will make building this project even more easier, and it's actually good practice to use variables throughout your styling whenever you're doing CSS. So with that being said, we'll close out this style guide because we won't be needing it anymore, and then we'll go back to our HTML page. So let's just start writing our markup for the HTML. Inside of the body tag, we're going to have a container, and we're going to wrap it inside. It's going to be a main of class of container. So I'm using MX shortcuts to just get the class of container. And see, it generates it quickly, pretty easily. Then inside of the container, we're going to have the card, which is this card right here that houses the whole advice box. This is the container around it that has this dark color. So we're going to have a card, and we're going to put it inside a section. So say section with a class of card. Inside of this card now, we're going to start putting our markups. So the first thing we need is this tag right here. I'm going to wrap this in the H1 tag. And the reason is because it's good practice that when you build a web page, the first heading that you have in the page is H1 heading. And there are actually accessibility reasons for that might be too large to explain in this session. But what I just want you to understand is that this H1, your first heading in the HTML page should be H1. And then subsequent headings will be like from H2 and H3. So we're going to use the H1 for the advice tag. We'll just say H1 with a class of advice tag. That's it. And then inside, let's just get this picture over here so that we can get the text for the tag. So I'll put this here. So inside, you can see it says advice ID 117, and then we'll write our quotes now. So this quote, we are going to wrap it inside a block quote, which is a semantic HTML tag for wrapping quoted text. So we'll give it a class of too many double quotes. We'll give it a class of advice-quotes. Then again, this is not mandatory. You can actually name this whatever you want. So inside of the quotes tag, we'll write our quoted text. So say it is easy to sit up and take notice. What difficult is getting up and taking action. Okay, so we have our quoted text inside. Let's say you want to see the text is here. Let's keep going. The next thing we need is the image. And then I'll show you something. In our image file here, which is this folder, in our image folder here, you can see we are provided with two different images for the divider that you see right here. This divider, we have the first one, which is for the desktop screen. We have the second one, which is for the mobile screen. And I'm going to show you a little wonderful semantic element that we can use to get this this divider over here. And the element I'm talking about is the picture tag. So this is a semantic HTML element that helps you to specify multiple images for one different location. So we want like multiple images here, but we don't want to put these images side by side. We want each of these images to be activated, or want to see this image based on a certain width or a certain height. So you can specify it however you want. And this picture tag takes in two properties. The first one is the source property. So in the source property, we have an attribute called media, and this is where we specify the width of where we want this image to take place in. The first value we need is the desktop screen. So let me just explain this quickly. We want on the desktop screen, we want to load the long image, and then we want when we reduce the size of the design, we want to load the mobile divider over here. So basically, we are adding two different images there, and then each of these images are being activated based on the size of the screen. So the first one is going to be the desktop, and we are going to use min width to select this. So we'll just say min width 600 pixels, and then it has an src set attribute, unlike the image tag that has the src attribute. And this is this helps us to get the source of this image in the source attribute. So inside, we link our desktop image. So let's just see where these images are. So images / pattern divider desktop. So images / pattern divider desktop .svg, because they are SVG images. So we specify the image for the desktop screen. So we'll copy this down. And then paste it here. But instead of min width, we're going to say max width. So max width of 550 pixels. So we are basically saying when the screen is 600 pixels and higher, so at tablet size and higher, that's from tablet to desktop to TV and those other bigger sizes, we want to load the desktop image. And then this max width 550 pixels is saying from 550 pixel, that's lesser than the tablet, and lower, we want to load the mobile image. So we'll just change this here to mobile.svg. And then finally, still inside the picture tag, we'll have one last property, which is the Img tag. And this is for the fallback. This is a fallback image, just in case the browser doesn't support the picture attributes, it can fall back to these Img attributes that it recognizes. I'll just give this a class so that we can be able to select this later on in this session. So I'll just call this line. And then in the SRC, we'll select the images as usual. But this time I'm going to select the desktop version. And then we'll add an alt, which is recommended. We'll just call this, we'll call this icon divider. I don't know. Okay, so we have our picture elements set up completely. So let's just check it out and see what we've done. So you can see this is the image for the desktop. You can see it's the desktop divider. And then when we shrink this screen to tablet and less, you can see it switched to the mobile divider. So you can see this was done completely with the picture property. You didn't have to use any CSS or any media queries. It just activates the image based on the values that we put in here. So that is pretty cool. Then I think the last thing we need is the button. So let's just see how this button looks. So you can see the button is here. We have the dice image inside of the button. So we'll use the button elements to do this, and then inside we'll wrap the button with we'll wrap the Img with the button, so we can style it and give it this circle that we have here. So inside the section we'll have a button with a class of btn. Inside of this button we'll have our Img tag, and then the source will be the images / icon dice, which is that dice icon I showed you earlier. And then the alt, we can just say dice icon. Always put alt text in your images, so it will help with accessibility and all that. I think that's all for our markup. I believe that's all. So let me just save. Okay, this is it. I know this is looking very ugly, but as we continue, you see how the style will take shape. So let's start adding our CSS. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to reset this, reset the whole styling, the margin, the padding, and everything. So we start specifying them from scratch. This is highly recommended. So we say margin 0, padding 0 as well, and then box sizing, say border box. So this will remove, you can see it zeroed all the margin and all the padding and the spacing between each of the content. So, and then the next thing we'll do, we'll start styling the body, I guess. So we'll select the body tag, and then we'll change the font family first. So that's one thing that we need to do first. We change the font family, and let's see the fonts that we used. I don't forget to copy the font size. So we're using manrope. So we'll add that here. We'll say manrope, and then we'll add another font in case manrope is not available. Say manrope. Okay, our font is working. That's cool. And then we'll change the background color of this. So we'll select the variable that we specified earlier. This I think BG primary. That's the variable for the dark background. So we'll say BG primary. So you can see we didn't need to put the colors directly here. We can just call the variable and it will be used here. This is a pretty handy way to not repeat yourself when you are writing CSS or any code in general. So we'll change the color. We'll give it a text color, I believe. Okay, the colors have changed. Yeah, that's cool. The next thing that we need to do, we need to display every image as block level elements. You know, by default, images are inline. You can see this image is on the same line with this. The divider is the same line with the button right here because of that image that we added. So we can just display all the images as block. So this image will push it down here. You can see it pushes it down here. Now all images are block. That's cool. Any other thing that we need to do? So let's just go back to the design and see what we are doing next. So the next thing we are doing, we want to style the container and align this card right here to the center. So we want to align this card here to the center. So we specified the container class. So we'll be using the container class to select the container around the card. So the first thing we want to do is to display this as flex. Display it as flex, and then we'll give it a direction, a flex direction of column. So instead of being in a row, all the elements will be in a column down and not horizontally like that. So we'll align all the items in the flex box. We'll align all the items to the center, and then we'll justify all the items to the center as well. Okay, so you can see that this aligns the container of the card to the center, but it doesn't come down to the middle because we haven't given it a height. So we'll give it a height of let's say 90 viewport heights. You can see it's now dead right in the center. Actually, to get it dead in the center, you use 100 viewport heights, but I believe this design is, you can see we are almost in the same line with it. So I'm using 90 viewport heights. I believe that is better value. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is to give it a background color. Okay, no, we already added the background color in the body, so that is okay. We don't need to do the background color. So let's just add a padding inside the container. We can just say 2.5 rem of padding in the container. So give more spacing. You can see we have more space in here. Okay, that's cool. And then another thing we need to do is give it a margin and a max width. So we say max width of then we select the desktop max width that we specified earlier. I believe we use width-desktop. So we use the max width, and then we give it a margin of 0 on the top and bottom, and then auto on the left and right. Okay, I think that is all for the container. So we can now move over to the card section, which is this card itself right here. So we did class of card, and the first thing we will do, we change the background so that we can see what is going on with the card. I believe we use the secondary color for the card. BGs are secondary. You can see the color here now. It selects everything inside of the card container. So now we can give it a display of flex. So we can align all the items inside of the card container. We do flex direction. Say column. So all the items are on the columns and not on rows that are by the side of each other. So we have to align it so that this stuff won't be as long as it is. It takes up 100% of the container. So we'll use align items to do that. Align items center. You can see it brings it to the dead center. We can do a text align for the text. Text align, do center. So we align the text in the card container, and then we give it a padding. So we get all the items, get spacing around the elements. Okay, so we have the spacing around the elements now. And now we look at this design just to be sure. You can see the spacing is very, very similar to what we have here, which is cool. Okay, so let's increase the screen. You can see that mine looks a bit longer than what we have in the design. Okay, let's get the accurate design for this. Okay, this is what we have. You can see theirs is kind of shorter, or will I say it's not as long as what we have here. So we'll use the width to reduce the width of this container, of the card. Say max width. We'll just say 550 pixel. Okay, you can see it has shrunk the size of the card. And the reason I'm using max width is because I don't want to give it a fixed width of, I don't want to just use width. Just using width will work, but when the content inside of the width is bigger than 550 pixels, is going to the content is going to like overlap, it's going to overflow out of the card. So we want to say max width, so it helps us to get it won't overflow this content, and it will be fixed to this 550 pixel, and then maybe we can use a media query to like make it 100%, and then it won't overflow. So that's the max width. But that's why I'm using max width. So now next thing we need is the border radius around the card right here. So just say border radius, maybe 1 rem. Okay, so the radius around the elements. Is there any other thing that we are missing? Let's see. Okay, I think the card itself, the card container is okay. So let's start styling the text. On the first text we want to style with the advice tag, which is this advice number ID we have here. So we select the advice tag, we give it a color, we change the color to primary color. Okay, we change it to the primary color. So we reduce the font size. Reduce the font size to, let's say, okay, did we specify the variable for the font size? Okay, we did font dash primary. Okay, we can use this font dash primary. Say var, paste in the font dash primary here. You can see it reduces the size. So the next thing is to transform the text, make it uppercase. You can see here it's completely uppercase, and so we'll do that here as well. So we use the text transform. We use the text transform property, and we say uppercase. I think I made a mistake here. Transform, not transform. Okay, so we say uppercase. Yeah, cool. You can see the text is uppercase right now. Okay, let's continue. Any other thing we need for the? Okay, we need to let's check. Okay, there are spacing between the text, and it's kind of smaller, I believe. So we'll just space that out first. Let's space it out with letter spacing. Let's say 3 pixels. Okay, space it out, and then let's reduce the fonts. Let's reduce the font a little. So let's say it's 0.8. 0.8, and that didn't work. Let's try 0.5. For some reason, that did not work. Okay. Okay, that works. Yes, that worked perfectly. So the font size is reduced the way we want it. So we check the design just to be sure. I think it looks pretty accurate. You know, this is a picture, so we can't really get the actual font size from here. And since we weren't given, we'll have to just gauge it with our eyes and maybe reduce it a little bit, maybe to 0.75. Okay, I think that's better now. So let's keep going. I think we're done with this advice tag here. We can continue. The next thing we want to style is the quoted text over here, and we used the advice quote class. We use the advice quote class. So we'll make the font weight bigger, make it thicker. We'll say font weight. We'll say let's see the variable that we use for the font weight. We said weight, so just this. We should increase the weight. So we'll leave this and paste it in here. Okay, you can see the weight is thicker now. And then we want the font size. We want to increase the font size. Let's see the font size that we were given here. Okay, the font size is 28 pixels, which is stored in the font quotes variable. So we'll add that here. Okay. Let's start to create our var. Then we paste that inside of the variable. Yeah, Yeah, that's completely perfect. It's looking almost accurate. Yeah, that's really. So we'll give it a spacing in between. Give some spacing in between on the top and bottom. Let's try 1.5 rem on the top and bottom, and then the left and right we want 0, 1 0 on the left and right. Okay, so we have more spacing between here and now. Look at the design. I think there's more spacing underneath it, so let's increase the spacing on the bottom. So say 1.5 rem on the top and bottom, on the top, 0 on the left and right, and then 1.7 on the bottom. So we have more spacing here now, which is cool. I think that's all for the advice quotes. I think we're done with that. The next thing we want to do is work on this button. So you can see the button is down here, is like dead middle of this line, of the bottom line here. So we want to push this button down, and then we'll style the button itself. Okay. So let's select the button with the btn class, and then we change the background first. We change the background to the primary color. Okay, we change it to the primary color, and then we remove the border around the button. Say border none. And remove the border around the button. We'll give it a padding. Let's say 1 rem. Okay, we added that spacing between the padding. So we'll add the border radius to make it rounded, because it's a rounded button. We'll say 50%. This will make it 50%. More like make it 100% rounded. I don't know why this was 50%, but it's funny. But you can see it's now rounded completely. And from the design, our dice here is smaller than what we have here, so I'll increase the size of this padding to, let's say, 1.3. Okay, I think that's way better now. Yeah, I will also give it a cursor of pointer. So when someone hovers on the button, you have a pointer. Yeah, you can see when you hover, you have a pointer now. Yeah, so I think that's all for the button. We don't have anything that we're doing here. We just have to push it down here now. To push the button down, we're using a transform. We in transform translate property. And we'll be selecting the y-axis. So we're selecting the axis on the y. We don't want to translate it we don't want to translate it vertically, but more horizontally. So we'll say we want to translate it 30 pixel from the top. So we save, you can see it pushed it 30 pixel from the top. Excuse me. So let's push it more, let's increase it. So say 50 pixel, 60 pixel, and let's say 65 pixel, 65. That's almost there. Let's try 67. Or let's try 70. Okay, I think 70 did just fine. 70 is just fine. Okay. Yeah, let's check the design to see if we are okay. It looks similar, but there's this spacing that we have here, so we have to eliminate this spacing here. Let's see. Okay. I believe this is the spacing on the bottom. So we did on the top 2.5 rem. Okay, on all sides we want 2.5 rem. So let's say 2.5 rem on the top and bottom. We want 2.5 on the left and right, and maybe 0 on the bottom. Okay, yeah, we've lost the spacing, but we've also shifted the button outside of the container. So maybe we'll just give it a little spacing on the bottom. Yeah, and then push this back up and reduce the value for the translate property so that we can have the button back here. So maybe we say 50 pixel or 40 or 35. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think we're almost done with the design, looking somewhat similar to what we have here. Okay, and you can see when we when we slash rank this, you can see it's very responsive, and we haven't even written any media query for this. So I think that's cool. The next thing that we need to do is the hover state. Let's check the design. You can see we have an active state rather. So you can see when you hover on the button, we want this shadow around the button. We've already done the cursor pointer. We just have to add the shadow when someone hovers on the button. So we'll select the btn class and we'll add the hover selector. So we say we want to use a box shadow. Now let's just say 10 pixel, 10 pixel, 10 pixel, 10 pixel. And then we select the color that's the primary color here. For some reason, box shadow don't really work with variables for some reason. So we have to use the color value itself for the shadow. So we'll paste the color here, and yikes, that is too much. That is too much. So let's make this 0. Okay. Let's make this 0 as well. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I still see the border around this stuff. Shall we remove the border around it? I still see that border around it. I don't know. Okay, let's try to make this. Let's try to make this a bit lighter. A bit lighter. Let's try. Let's make 0 here as well. Okay, it's a bit lighter, but it's not spread out as much as we have in the active state design. So we try 3 pixels. Okay, this is somewhat similar to what we have. So let's increase this value a little here. Okay, yeah, I guess we've made it kind of similar to the design we have here. Yes, I believe it's similar. Okay, let's just add a simple transition so that this will transition smoothly when we hover on the button. So say transition, say 0.3 seconds, and we want it to ease in and out. So you can see the transition now is smoother. The animation of the hover of the button is smoother now. So that is cool. I believe that is all that we have to do for the styling now. I believe that's all we have to do. I need to reduce the spacing between this container here. I believe that value is too much. Okay, it's 2.5 rem. So maybe let's try 1 rem. Yeah. Or let's try 1.3 rem. Okay, I think this is better now. So we are officially done with the styling. So we can now go to the fun part, which is adding the JS and getting the advice API to generate the advices for us. Now see, if you click the button, it does nothing because we haven't added our JS. So let's just start. I'll close down this design file. We won't be using this anymore. Close down the design files. So let's create a JS file where we'll be adding our JS. Say main.js, making sure we are in the root folder. And yeah, so we'll link this JS file. Usually do that at the bottom of the page, in the body, inside of the body tag, and we use the scripts. Use the script elements. We say script source. We say main.js. Yeah. So we'll link our JS file. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to declare our variables for each of the elements here that will be changing. So the first thing we're going to declare is we're going to use a const. We'll declare the advice ID, which is this ID over here, because you notice if you click when I showed you the finished work, you see that this advice ID changes when this button is clicked, as well as the quotes here. So both of them changes, so we have to make it dynamic. So say advice, we use advice ID, and we'll set it to a query selector. We'll say document dash query selector. Document dot query selector. Okay, and then we're going to select the class of this ID tag. We say class of advice dash tag. Okay, so we'll do the same thing for the quoted text here and the button as well. So copy this down. We say advice, instead of the advice ID, we say advice quotes, and then we'll select the class of advice dash quotes, because that's the class that we used to assign to this the quoted text here. So we'll do it for the button as well. So we say btn, that's what we call this variable, document the query selector, and then we select the class of btn. Yeah, so that's what we've successfully declared our variables that we'll be using to select each of these properties here. And what we want to do next is to write a function. And what we want this function to do is to generate the advice based on the API that we are going to be using. So I'll just write a function here and I'll call it generate advice. Just leave it blank for now. So we need to get the advice API. Let's just write a fetch here. So we want to use this to fetch the API. This is where we'll be pasting the API here. So let's get the API for this stuff here. If we go back to Frontend Mentor, we have the API has been given to us here. So we'll just go to the API page. I'll close this out since we're not using that anymore. So we are using the random advice because we want to be generating random advice when the button is clicked. So we'll copy this. We'll copy it. And we'll go back to our, let's see. Yeah, we'll go back to our work. And then we'll paste this inside the fetch. So we want to fetch API from this link. Okay. And then we'll open the parentheses here. And then we'll say cache. We don't want to store the cache. This is because when you click this button, it is going to store the value. We don't want that to be stored. So we say the cache will be no cache. Okay. So okay, we have this. Let me add this comma here. That's what we have an issue. Okay, that's cool. Moving on. Okay, I have this issue here. Just brackets here. Put it over here. And that will give us a lot of errors if we leave it that way. Yeah, okay. So let's keep going. We'll write a very simple statement, a promise statement, where we use to get the values of each of these elements from the API. So let's just write that now. So this promise statement will say then, and then we want a response arrow function. We say response dot JSON. Okay, and then we say the same thing. Say the same thing here. Say response, and the arrow function as well, and from the parentheses here. Now we say let the data be response slip. We do the same thing here for the data ID. Data ID will be the data ID. And then finally for the advice, the data advice will be set to the data dot advice. Okay, so basically what we're trying to do here is we want this function, we want to run this function. This is the values of we have here. We want to say inside this function we are fetching this API right here. I may not be able to explain it completely, but I just wanted to understand that we are using this function to fetch this API over here, and we're going to be adding the button selector so that it will, and the event listener, so we can use the button to run this function and get us the API that we need. So finally, we're going to say advice ID dash inner HTML. We set it to advice, the hash. So we say the data ID that we need. Okay, we'll do the same thing here, but for the quoted text itself. So we'll say advice, advice quotes dash inner HTML. But what we need this time is the data advice. Okay, I think we are done with that. Okay, so I've saved. Well, if we press this is not going to work because we haven't added the event listener. So when we click this button, it changes the advice that we have here by default. So that's what we do. That'll be the last thing. So we'll create an event listener for the button. We say add event listener on the button. And then when we click this button, we want to generate our advice. So basically when we click this button here, we want to run this function which generates our advice. So we save that and then check our stuff. Yeah, so you can see it worked. It worked. You can see we get different advices here. You can see be brave, even if you're not pretend to be, no one can tell the difference. And you can see up here, the ID of this advice also changes when we click. You can see it gives us another ID and another advice here. And it's completely powered by the API that we used, which generates random advices for us. So I believe that we've been able to build this. We don't have any other thing to do here. Let me see. Oh, sorry. Let me see this design and see. Let me open it up and see how responsive it is. So switch to responsive mode. Okay. So we let's try S10 plus. Okay. We have a spacing. We have okay. This is shrinked and it is. This is shrinked and it doesn't shrink to fit the container. So maybe we'll use a max width. Use media queries to like fix that. So let's go back to the size, screen size. So it's 360 width. The width is 360. So let's go back to the design. Close this out. Let's go back to the CSS. So we'll write a very simple media query for say media max width. So we want from this particular width. I'm going to use the width that was provided for us, which is this mobile width. So say at this mobile, at the width of 375 pixels and below, we want this this styling to be active. So we want the card. You know, before on the card class, we set the max width to be 550 pixels. So this is fixed. So even when the screen size is lower than 550 pixels, it doesn't shrink the content. Like the content overlaps on the stuff. So we actually want this content to shrink when we reduce the screen size on smaller screens. So instead of max width 375, we say max width say 100%. Okay, so we can test that out. So you can see now on the Galaxy S10, you can see the images, the content shrink, and it doesn't. Okay, we can see this image here is going out of the container because this image is longer than the specified width right now. We can fix that in a very simple way. We can just you can select the image. Okay, we use the class of line for the image. So we can say class of line. We want the width to be 100% as well. Or better still, since we already have 100% max width 100% here, we can add it to this place as well. So it works the same way. So you can see when we shrink it, let's try it again. So let's shrink the size. You can see the image inside now shrinks together with the viewport, with the card. So this is very responsive now. And let's try iPhone 5, which is a very messy with. You can see it works and is perfectly responsive. Yeah, so I think that's all for. I think that's all. We've successfully been able to build this, and I hope you want a thing or two. So I'll just go back to I'll go back to the platform and see what. Okay, so let's see if there's any questions that we have. Okay, the first question I'm seeing here is, what is your advice on writing responsive fonts? Okay, writing responsive fonts. Yeah. This is a very good question. I actually forgot to say this, but when you are writing your font, you don't want to use pixels. You want to avoid using pixels. And I know I made that mistake. I'm giving you advice that I didn't take, so I will just quickly change that now. So when writing responsive fonts, you want to use rem instead of pixels, because rems are relative to the viewport or relative to the elements that you're working with. So using rems are more responsive rather than pixels that are fixed. So let's go back to our fonts that we specified. I think it's font code 28 pixel. So quickly convert that to rem. Thank you for pointing that out. So let's just get our calculator out and okay, so 28 divided by 16, because rems are 16 pixels. One rem is equal to 16 pixels. So we want to calculate how many rems are in 28 pixels. So we divide it by 16. So 1.75 rem. 1.75 rem. So we have, this is the way to make your font sizes responsive. That's a very good question. I hope I've been able to answer that. Do we have any more questions? Let me see. Check the chat section.
Yes, Victor, we do have 2 more questions here. I'll just read them out for you.
Okay.
So the next question is, what is the full form of VH and REM, the attributes that you
I didn't
use
get that,
inside
sorry.
the CSS file? Yeah, what is the full form of VH and REM, the attributes that you use inside the CSS file?
Like the full meaning of the full meaning of that. Yeah, VH means viewport height. So what it basically means is that by default, the height of a, okay, let me go back to design to explain that. By default, the height of like a page is 100 viewport heights. So saying 90 viewport heights, we are saying 90 height of the page. So that's what VH means. And then rem means relative to, I believe, relative to the container or relative to the element. But basically, what rem does is that it selects the value that is relative to that element or that container. So when I say padding 1.3 rem, so I'm basically saying 1.3. I'm saying 1.3 that is relative to this container here, which is actually the body, I believe, because it's the closest element that is relative to. And the value of one rem is 16 pixels, like I said earlier. So I think I hope I answered that correctly.
Yeah, thank you so much for answering that. There's one more question here.
Okay.
I just copy that question here and send it over in the chat so that you can also read it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the public chat. Yeah. So this is the question: fetch versus Axios. What should one prefer and on what basis?
Okay, fetch. This is a tricky question. I think it depends on the kind of thing that you're trying to fetch. And I'm building a very simple application here. I'm just trying to get a random API. So I don't think we need to go do anything too crazy. So we just use fetch, which is, and also most of these APIs that you use, they specify the way that you should get the API. And in the advice slip API, we use fetch. They use fetch or they recommend fetch. So that's what I use. So I'll say use it based on what the API recommends for on the type of intricacy of what you're trying to build or the API you're trying to call.
Yeah, that definitely does answer the question. I think that's all we have for today. I loved how the session went. I personally learned so much from you, Victor, today. Thank you so much for helping the explorers on this journey.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm glad it was awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. If any of you have any more questions, please feel free to join our Discord community and ask the questions there. Victor is one of the mentors for the contributor roadmaps, and there are a lot of other mentors for different sessions that we're going to host in the future. So feel free to join our Discord community and ask all of your questions there. We'll be happy to help you around today. And of course, thank you to the audience for joining us. We'll see you in the next session. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Yeah, see you all. Bye.